back and the same thing for Tuesday. Internet is struggling. But anyway, please, so that people will know how to refer to you. And thank you for your technical issues, so just stand by. And this is our presentation. Us. My name is Estelle. I use they, she pronouns, and my co-host.
Hi, I'm Tuesday, and I use they, them pronouns. And yes, our presentation is about tokenization and fetishization of people of color. And we kind of wanted to start the breakout room, or not the breakout room, the presentation out with just like a quick write. So if you have any paper or like a computer or your notes app or anything, we want you to write for a couple minutes. The question is, what do you believe is fetishization? And have you experienced it due to an identity of yours, or have you witnessed it? And yeah, we'll give you like 2 minutes to just write that out, and then we'll come back and talk and then start the presentation.
So it's been about 2 minutes now. And if anyone wants to, you can message it in chat. Or if you want to, you can feel free and shout out or raise your hand on the Zoom app. Tuesday, tell me if someone raises their hand. But yeah, does anyone feel comfortable enough to share something? We could do it where someone could define what is fetishization. Does anyone feel comfortable defining what they perceive as fetishization?
Cool. We got someone in chat, Ryan, I believe. Bi/pan/queer fetishization. Yikes. Yes, yikes. We're actually like going to be talking about like how different identities intersect with fetishization. And yes, did anyone else?
Just to add on to what Ryan, oh, Tuesday, were you saying something? Okay. Just to add on to what Ryan was saying, that is exactly, and what Tuesday was saying, that is exactly what we're going to talk about more. But, and we will define what fetishization more in depth, but I can give you a brief overview just to prepare going into the presentation that fetishization is when someone fixates or objectifies a certain part of your identity or culture into something that is based until they base your whole personality around it, where they have assumptions based on these qualities associated with an identity you have. But yeah, if no one else would like to share, we can move on to our next slide.
So now we kind of wanted to introduce the presentation by emphasizing the difference between gender and sexuality. Oftentimes people are really ignorant to these definitions, and this breeds a lot of misunderstanding and miscommunication. So gender and sexuality are not interchangeable terms. Sexuality refers to one's sexual orientation, which does not always include simply sexual attraction to specific genders. Sexuality is a spectrum and can include things such as bisexual, lesbian, pansexual, gay, asexual, among many others. Sexuality has to do with the way that you personally identify and how you experience sexual or romantic attraction, if at all you do, and your interests and preferences around sexual and or emotional relationships. So we're going to be talking about sexuality, and we wanted to just, make sure to kind of emphasize what we're talking about. And we can go to the next slide.
We're going to share some of our own experiences with tokenization, fetishization, and biphobia throughout our lives, but also describe some of what that actually means.
So I'm going to be talking about biphobia. So I wanted to single in on biphobia and its negative impact on the LGBTQAI plus community, especially the bi community. There are many intersections of biphobia, which makes it really layered, and like it has also very layered definitions to it. So furthermore, biphobia is an aversion, or biphobia is an aversion towards bisexuality and bisexual people as individuals. It can take the form of denial that bisexuality is a genuine sexual orientation, or of negative stereotypes about people who are bisexual. Other forms of biphobia include bi erasure, which all of these just invalidate the identity a lot. And biphobia can also manifest itself in bi erasure, like I said previously. This encompasses mislabeling bi individuals as gay or lesbian despite an individual already coming out as bi, or denying the bi label entirely, or assuming someone's sexuality. Moreover, biphobia invalidates those that identify as bi and oftentimes pansexual. I also want to mention how monosexism is a part of biphobia. So monosexism essentially refers to the belief that monosexuality is superior and more valid than bisexuality. Additionally, monosexuality refers to like sexual or romantic attraction towards one gender. Although I technically identify as pansexual, I often experience biphobia, since a lot of the intersections of biphobia and pansexuality are like relating to each other a lot of the times. That being said, I do identify with both labels. An experience I've had where I encountered biphobia is actually with an ex of mine. So he was a white and straight male. I was in a monogamous relationship with this person. However, he essentially said that like girls don't count, and that I could pursue women, and that he would still consider our relationship monogamous. This invalidated my bisexuality in many ways. He did not feel threatened by me loving women because he did not like view my sexuality as meaningful or sincere, which is a lot of what like biphobia encompasses and what a lot of bi people experience. And again, this is just one of the among the many other ways that biphobia can be manifested, and how I've like come into terms or come encountered with biphobia. Another example is regarding someone in my family. It has been known that I was not straight in my family since like a very young age. Some family members feared I was lesbian, while other members of the family just didn't take my sexuality seriously. So one time I got a boyfriend, and despite this particular family member knowing I was bisexual, she decided to essentially tell my family friends that like I'm not actually gay because I had a boyfriend, and essentially mislabeled me to a lot of people. And this happens a lot, and this actually contributes to bi erasure, which is a huge problem in a huge like sector of biphobia. And now we're going to talk about tokenization.
Just to add on a little bit of what Tuesday said, many bisexual or M-spec people experience biphobia, or rather panphobia or queerphobia, a lot of that, and that includes myself. And I've had past partners also discount my attraction towards women, but also that they said that it wouldn't be as bad if I cheated on them with a woman than with a man. And that creates its own kind of dichotomy, like how is cheating on a woman less severe than with a man? And that whole, it contributes to the whole discounting attraction to women as a legitimate attraction. And then whenever I'm with a partner that is male, my friends have said to me like, hey, does that mean you're straight now? But that's not how that works exactly. Because sexuality is a spectrum and it can change, but just because you are dating someone of the opposite or same sex does not negate the label you choose to have with yourself. But now we will continue on with the presentation.
Hi, everyone. So now we're going to talk about tokenization of BIPOC. First, I will define tokenization of people of color in this case. In my opinion, this definition encompasses the most crucial information regarding tokenism, and it reads, tokenism is simply covert racism. Racism requires those in power to maintain their privilege by exercising social, economic, and/or political muscle against people of color. Tokenism achieves the same while giving those in power the appearance of being non-racist and even champions of diversity because they recruit and use POC as radicalized props. So essentially tokenization is when individuals, companies, the media, a ton of different platforms essentially center a non-white person in a position of power in some terms of like deflecting against discrimination or racism. And this was just an example of something that can happen in a company or an agency. But essentially, it's exploiting other people's identities, people of color in this case, under the guise of racial equality. I'm now going to demonstrate examples of tokenization. So for example, playing the friend card is an example of tokenization. An example of this could be if someone says they can't be racist because they have a Black friend, or they can't be homophobic because they have a gay friend. Another example of tokenization is when a white man will say that he only dates people of color and essentially refers to their partner as somewhat of a trophy. Tokenization is also present in industries, other like big, large companies, schools, especially in universities. It's essentially when a person of color, a BIPOC individual gets hired and they're used as diversity points. And this is also seen in universities. Like, for example, when essentially photographers will be seeking out BIPOC individuals on campus, and will essentially try to interview or get extra pictures of them. And like, this is something that I've also experienced at USF. I'm now going to bring some of my personal testimony or experience into this. So I've experienced a lot of tokenization, especially from my white family. Just for context, most of my white family members are either overtly or covertly racist. For example, when I confronted my cousin on his racism, he said that, of course, he can't be racist towards Black people because he has Black family, despite him being like overtly racist, like not even trying to hide it. This also happened with another person in my family regarding the LGBTQAI plus community. So just for some context, I'm a queer, Black, non-binary person. And one time my dad said something very homophobic. And when I called him out on it, he said that he couldn't be homophobic because he worked for gay people. So that's just an example of essentially using POC identities as a way to like benefit yourself and benefit your reputation. So like I said, these comments are often covert racism and often can also be overtly racist as well. Tokenization also, I want to like mention, it's a result of systemic oppression. It's essentially two sides of a coin. Tokenism represents internalized dominance for white people, and it also represents internalized oppression of people of color. So that being said, it's crucial for BIPOC to recognize this internalized depression because it's very harmful and it keeps BIPOC silent and isolated. And a lot of the times we're kind of forced to even be silent, and sometimes we self-isolate and sometimes we're actually forced to isolate. And this is why collective healing is necessary. And now we're going to be talking about fetishization.
Um, Thank you for sharing Tuesday. Obviously, very poignant. You already know that. Yeah, I love what Tuesday just said. And we're going to talk about fetishization now, which is on the other side of the tokenization coin as well. And even if this is in your bedroom, your relationships, culturally, societally, it's everywhere. Sexual fetishization affects every part of our lives, whether you're BIPOC or you're white. Racial fetishizations means to sexualize someone based on their race and or ethnicity, especially regarding BIPOC. In this quote on the screen by Janice Asari, she talks about how fetishization and the racism behind it can be seen. Fetishization can be thought of as the act of making someone an object of sexual desire based on some aspect of their identity. While on the surface, it may seem benign and even complimentary, oftentimes these preferences can actually reinforce harmful stereotypes that are already held about different groups. When picking partners, I've had to evaluate whether or not they have yellow fever or not, or in other words, fetishize my Asian heritage and appearance. Additionally, I've had to deal with past partners discounting my attraction towards women, as I already told, and not counting them as actual partners. Asian women or feminine presenting people are viewed as servile, submissive people, feminine servants to the patriarchy and their whims. People expect me to be a bottom in bed and also expect me to be this docile creature that can only take commands. Additionally, I have been expected to be a freak in bed because of my queerness, which in turns brings more expectations of who I am as a person without knowing who I am actually. These expectations and assumptions are through a sexual lens, showing that I'm viewed as a pleasure, an object, less about who I really am again. And even if I am all of those things, even if I were a bottom or a freak or something else, that's not because of my race or sexuality. One does not necessarily mean the other. More so, I'm going to refer to the MPA in this quote, and the MPA refers to the common defense of racial fetishes, that they are just a preference, and represents the mere preferences argument. The response to the mere preferences argument here is twofold. First, individuals' racial fetishes always depend on racial stereotypes rather than pure aesthetic features. And second, explicit disavowals of the stereotypes provide no evidence against this fact because the origins of sexual preferences are not usually transparent to those who have them. This quote from Robin Zen's Why Yellow Fever Isn't Flattering, a case against racial fetishes, details how fetishization is rooted in racial stereotypes. And those stereotypes are racist. They assume our personalities based on these beliefs attached to our race and reduces our personhood to those sexual stereotypes. More so, how people with yellow fever do not see it as a problem. Again, the mere preferences argument, when in fact these preferences are harmful in and of itself, displaying deliberate ignorance when it comes to sexualizing people of any race, including Asian. In another quote by Zhang, it talks about how many Asian American women detail the racial stereotypes they feel subjected to by men with yellow fever, along with the significant emotional labor required to fulfill, resist, or otherwise negotiate those stereotypes. Even worse, stereotypes about Asian women render them particularly vulnerable to sexual harassment and violence by men who target them on that basis. Asian American women are saddled with the burden of coping with these stereotypes and perceptions towards us, having to fight many in order to be recognized as a person, as someone that has character beyond what is characterized through media. More so, this leaves Asian women vulnerable in another aspect, with men thinking that it's okay to have violence or harassment towards them based on these stereotypes, thinking that what Asian women are servile, submissive, and willing to go along with this. In conversations with others about the prevalence of Asian racial fetishization, I'm usually disregarded or ignored because I should take it as a compliment. And those fetishized should take this as a compliment. But how could someone take being objectified and racially stereotyped as a compliment? This occurs especially with white people, with their own white fragility becoming an issue in having these conversations. To clarify, white fragility is a state in which even a minimum amount of racial stress becomes intolerable, triggering a state of defensive moves that can include ignoring the other person, disregarding their words, and many other actions in order to get away from the truth. In order to confront this issue, we must move away from fragility. We must have these conversations without someone being defensive. We have to be able to listen. But this extends beyond Asian women being fetishized, with all of BIPOC having been fetishized or commonly fetishized over their appearances and culture. In the past and present, sexualization is a tool to dehumanize non-white people for centuries, a tool to excuse any amount of atrocities. Sexualization is a common excuse to enslave BIPOC, dehumanizing them and reducing them to property. Fetishization strengthens racial stereotypes, but also more than that, strengthens this continued otherization of people of color. In creating the sexual divide between races, in sexualizing others, we no longer see the faults and strengths of a person, but reduce them down to a tool that is used for pleasure. These tools used to enforce these objectification and reduction contributes to white supremacy, and moving away from fetishization is a move away from white supremacy.
Thank you, Estelle. We are now gonna basically have a discussion question. Have you ever experienced a time when you felt your identity was either invalidated, fetishized, tokenized, any of the things that we learned about? If anyone has any stories, they can like put it in the chat, or they can like unmute themselves or raise their hand. So we're just gonna kind of like do this all together instead of a breakout room, because I don't have like the access to make a breakout room for some reason. But yeah. So actually we have someone in the chat. Their name's Eli. So Eli said, as an Afro, Latinx, non-binary queer person, so many people have come at me wanting something new or wanting to put me in the forefront as a token. Yes, I've had a similar experience. It literally feels terrible. Was it like at university? Okay, so they said it was at university jobs, everyday life. Yes, thank you for like sharing, Eli. Yes, agreed. It is very annoying and super harmful. Especially because it's always hard to like confront it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's reducing you down to what your identities are and not who you are as a person again. It that's terrible. But thank you again for sharing. Anyone can share, but if not, we can move on. But one more person, come on, just one more.
So I believe Ryan said something in the chat. So a lot of straight women who want to experiment think of queer women as an acceptable target for that without disclosing first. Yes, yes, yes. I've seen this as well. Thank you.
Yeah, oh yeah, sorry. Thank you for sharing as well. But so true. Straight women really be like, let me just use this woman as a prop. And then just be like, actually, I don't feel the same way. Yeah, no, exactly. And again, it's also like being used. They don't really respect you and your identity, but they just see you as a prop to explore with. But yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for sharing again.
Uh,
Um,
Professor also wants to say something.
yeah,
Hi, I'm talking to you from my car, but I'm enjoying your workshop so much so far. Something I want to add to this too is that I've been tokenized in my job, which is in the academe, as I've literally been told by a lot of white men in the academe that I am very lucky to be an indigenous immigrant queer woman of color in anthropology because I'm so unique and that people will want to work with me or that I have so many more opportunities because of my identities, as if I should be grateful for my identities that one, I have no actual choice over. This is who I am. And two, these are identities that have not historically given me any opportunities that I have actually had to be in these, white spaces, white institutions that tokenize these identities for their benefit, and that I had to seek their approval to even be in that space. So, what they view as something that I'm empowered by is actually something that these white institutions and spaces have oppressed me because of. So, like, I wanted to show that complexity that people think we're unique because we have these things that we are, when in fact these are the things that have actually caused society to oppress us. Thank you.
no, thank you for sharing. I really active to ice frozen on any of your guys' screens, but they are for me. So I believe that Tuesday would say the same.
Hi, sorry, sorry, y'all. My internet kind of went out for a while there, but thank you.